Computer. Right. So
Okay, so now I can just open it
we
and
are
we're good.
here. Yeah. And then you can just do your view. Get out of here. View full screen.
And then presentation mode.
Yeah. Where is that? You can figure it out from there.
Wait. Uh-oh. I think. Can I go back?
Yeah.
Oops. Ah. Wait, how did you do full screen? How do you go out of full screen?
I was in Chrome and then view. Although
Oh, yeah. I think we can just go to slides.
oh great. Okay.
And then that's good.
All right.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Oh, wait. Okay. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Lily. And I guess I'll start off by saying thank you for coming. It's like my third day on the island, so it's all still new and fresh, but it's been really an exciting welcome. So everyone has been very, very sweet. So I'm excited to spend the next 6 weeks here and get to know some of you a little bit more. But yeah, let's go ahead and start. So, how I came to be here, I was born in Florida, which I have no connection to. It was just kind of where my parents were at the time. Um, and then I actually moved with my older sister and my parents to Vancouver, Washington, when I was an infant. And then I lived in Vancouver until I was about 10. So that photo in the right there, that's two of my siblings, and that's in Long Beach, Washington. Um, so yeah, I definitely split my childhood between Vancouver, Washington, and Long Beach, California, which is where I moved um, when I was 10. And it feels very much like there's a big separation at that stage in my life. And I think part of me coming to Alchemy is I am trying to reconnect with my childhood up here, and it's a very special place. So, yeah, and then that's me on the left with a quilt that I actually don't think I talk about that in later on, but let's see. All right. So that's also me on the left. And to give a little bit of context to my art practice, I learned to sew when I was about 8 years old. My mom and my grandma taught me how to sew. My mom actually owned a children's clothing company growing up, and she was the designer for that. And when I was 8 or 10 or whatever, I was always like, I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna be a fashion designer like my mom. And so that kind of like maybe got me excited about sewing when I was little. It was around me a lot. Um, so yeah, early stages. And then on the right there, that's my grandma who lives in Long Beach. And I visited her and my grandpa on my way up here. And that big filing cabinet right there is full of her patterns. And she basically was showing me, she was flipping through all of them, and she was like, I can essentially retrace my entire life through these patterns. So she can pull one out and she can be like, in this year, my older sister sewed me this tiny dress, and I remember the occasion that it was for and the pattern or the fabric that they used. So is able to flip through these patterns and kind of recall her life in that way. And I didn't actually know that she had this big collection. She showed me about a week ago. Um, but yeah, I that kind of also gives you a little bit of background as to who came before me. And on both sides of my family, I have a lot of quilters and sewists. So that's something I'm sort of continuing. Let's see. Okay, so 2020, I graduated high school during the pandemic, so I actually didn't have a graduation. And then during the pandemic, I made the decision to move up to UC Santa Cruz, and I was a banana slug there. But it was COVID, so we were on lockdown, and pretty much the first 2 years of college was online for me. But that, looking back on it, I kind of got to really explore the area. I didn't have set classes. A lot of them were like asynchronous, and my schedule, I could kind of make myself, I could work and I could explore the area and I could go on camping trips, and I got to really like spend some time, you know, outdoors. But yeah, so I actually went in as an environmental studies major. Um, and that whole era or that whole period of time during the pandemic and taking environmental studies classes, it made me like very deeply sad. Just the state of the environment and kind of learning about it and taking these introductory courses that weren't really giving us solutions. They were really like, these are all the things that are wrong, and we don't really know what to do about it. So I got pretty sad around that time in those classes. And then I had like a dream one night that I was like, oh, you need to do art. Like, well, I always did art, but it was like, you need to switch your major to art. Like, you need to spend your time doing art. And pretty much overnight, I decided to switch my major. Um, and I think I just needed a break. I think I needed an outlet. Um, so I switched my major to art. And now we have the first bit of art that I did. So at that point, I only had 2 years left in college. And I felt like I had a lot to express. So this was like a very explosive time, and I was really excited about it, and I was getting involved. So this piece I did in my study abroad, which was like a 3-week study abroad in the Czech Republic in this countryside art center called Art Mill. And the theme of this program was art and globalization. And actually, that experience is probably the closest thing that has come to like me doing a residency. So I kind of am relating that experience a little bit to what's happening now. But yeah, so this project right here is called Fishkill. And I wish you could see the colors a little bit better, but all of that detail in the background, that's actually made with algae. And that was algae that I was collecting from this lake on the property every day. And some days it would be kind of thinner, and some days it would be thicker and smellier. And so every day I went out there and then I brought it back to the studio, and it was really, really smelly. But yeah, I think oh yeah, and then the fish actually were made with this charcoal that I had made vine charcoal with willow branches that were around the edge of that lake or pond.
How large is this piece?
It's 21 inches by 45 inches. Yeah, and it was actually made with an old, so this going into this program, they were kind of challenging us to work with what they had there, so none of us brought any materials. So the frame itself is actually an old window frame, and then they had some canvas lying. Oh no, it wasn't canvas, it was actually like an old like bed sheet or like a canvas mattress cover, some outdoor furniture type cover. Yeah, so that was a really interesting challenge, and because I didn't have materials going into it, I really had to think about what was there. And I started thinking about how my materials can like communicate for me, or like how I can like I was really trying to get to the root of my material and like find some truth in the material. And I was just getting really, really, I was trying to like simplify things, I think, or simplify my message through that. So that was a really exciting project for me. I actually left it there, so it's still in the Czech Republic. And I think about it often. All right, and so this was my first quilt. And it's called Resilience and Rest. And I made this one for an immersive arts-based field course that I took in the Mojave Desert. So a handful of undergraduate students and graduate students and our instructors went out to the Mojave Desert for a week and just kind of like talked and read and, just kind of hung out, and it was really amazing. And yeah, and I think during this time I was still feeling a lot of like sadness and grief and heaviness for the state of the environment. And I had also changed my major, and I think I felt a lot of guilt for doing that and kind of like I was abandoning it or abandoning that fight. And spending this week in the desert, which is an extremely resilient place. There's extreme weather events, floods, droughts, snow, like they've got it all. And by observing this ecosystem, basically there's these perennial plants that stay above ground year round, and they all have thorns, and are pretty gnarly and twisted, and they've kind of adapted to this environment to survive. And then there's a handful of dormant species that stay underground and bloom when the conditions are right to resurface. And they have their own unique role in the environment. So I was really inspired by this like bond that these two types of species have. So I kind of related that to my own life and how I felt like it's really important to like take time to rest and to process and to like absorb or kind of like sit with your grief when there are such, heavy things going on in the world. And I think that that's really essential for resilient communities. So yeah, this was my first quilt. And like I said, I had been sewing since I was little. I had sewn on and off, but this was the first time that I was like, I'm gonna make a quilt. And I thought it would be the medium, the correct medium for my message. And yes, and then we get to this 2024 Climate Grief Quilting Bee. It's a little bit warped in the corner there. But continuing to be feeling a need to express this grief I was carrying. And I also figured that other people were feeling the same. Many of my friends were also like environmental studies majors or were learning similar things. And I figured that they were also feeling some kind of feelings about it, and maybe there's not that space to talk about it. So I started this quilting bee, and a quilting bee, if anybody doesn't know, it's a gathering in which people, historically women, get together with like the shared goal of creating a quilt for a greater cause. And throughout time, quilting bees have brought communities together in times of struggle. It was a really important practice that isn't really done as often as it used to be done. And yeah, so I wanted to do this, and I got a grant to do it, which was extremely helpful. And that was called the Irwin Grant at UC Santa Cruz. But yeah, so basically there was like 17 students who participated in this project, and basically there's a big room and all the materials were there for people, and they all kind of got to do whatever they wanted on a square of fabric. And then I took them home and sewed them all together. And then I got out this great big quilting frame, and we all sat around this quilting frame and actually like stitched together. And it was a really magical experience because we were like, one person was on one side of the quilt, and like you'd be stitching, and then you're like, oh, I can't reach that. Can you tie that off for me? And someone else would tie off your row of stitches for you. And it was just really cute and sweet. And I wish you could see these photos better. It was kind of, because we were all working from one fabric stash, it all really goes together really well. And that was kind of unintentional, but it's a really beautiful quilt, and I maybe should have brought it so you guys could have seen it in person. But yeah, I think it's just like kind of this collective activity, and I think everybody just felt like really together in our grief, and I think that was really powerful. And here are a few close-ups of just a couple blocks. I wish I could show them all because they're all so beautiful. I wish you could see it better. Yeah, but this quote kind of tied some things together. Adaptation and evolution depend more upon critical, deep, and authentic connections. A thread can be tugged for support and resilience, the quality of connection between the nodes in the patterns, by Adrienne Marie Brown. Okay, and then we get to the Parable of the Sower, which is my favorite book, and I read it around this time. And that quote right there is, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is true. God is change. And yeah, I feel really inspired by this, like, thinking about the future and sort of like, it's very existential, but kind of planning and preparing and prepping and bracing for this future as a young person. And I think trying to find wisdom in the past to take with me into that future that is so up in the air. I don't, you don't know. But yeah, I'm very interested in the speculative fiction genre, and I am always trying to find ways to kind of tie that into my own work. And this is another quilt. And this one's called The Quilters Who Came Before Me. And this was sewn with discarded and unfinished quilt blocks. And yeah, I think I was just trying to connect with past quilters. And there is this sort of embodied experience that I get from quilting when I'm stitching. And I because I have so many women in my life in the past who were sewists and quilters, I feel like I'm doing as they are doing, and that is a cool feeling. And also quilters, like, quilts were made to keep people warm, and they were made out of like a necessity often, and scraps were taken and pulled from different things, and it was like a need and a sort of like a resistance in a lot of ways. So yeah, and then also with the added factor of like women getting together and doing these quilting bees, those quilting bees often like were the only opportunity for women to get together and talk. There wasn't a lot of space for them to have really radical conversations back in the day. So I think that the quilters they're really inspiring to me. And this quilt is an ode to that. And I think I skipped a slide. Oh yeah, okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the different types of storytelling that quilts can achieve, and the different, the ways in which quilts can do that. So the material stories, so when thinking about a quilt, you can think about where the material came from and where it was before it was in a quilt. So this quilt in the left corner there, that's a memorial quilt. So that was made out of a loved one's worn clothing. And that's something, just a way to memorialize a person. And yeah, and then also these are feed sack quilts, which is a really cool practice. And I wish it still was around. But if anybody doesn't know, back in, I think at the height was like during World War II, all kinds of like grains and flours and feed were stored in these bags that were cotton woven bags, and home sewists would repurpose these bags and make them into quilts or clothing and rags or just any kind of home use. And they were made with the intention that people would use them, which I think is so cool. This is a quilt inside of a quilt. So sometimes when a quilt is really worn out and it has holes in it and isn't functioning as it should, it can be used as batting inside of a new quilt. And yeah, a quilt, if anybody doesn't know, a quilt has 3 layers. There's the backing, the inside batting, which makes it nice and squishy, and then the top, the front of the quilt. And this is just extremely resourceful. All right, and then we have the Names Project. This is the AIDS Memorial Quilt. And this picture on the right is from their website, and you can go here and it's an interactive map, and you can zoom all the way in or all the way out and see, I think there was like 110,000 names on this quilt, and it's just memorializing all the people who lost their lives to AIDS-related illnesses. And that's just powerful and
That's wild.
yeah, and it's still being added to today. So it started in the 80s and people are still adding to it. And it sometimes it
Physically exists?
it physically exists. Yeah. And sometimes it travels around, and one day you might get the opportunity to see it, which I haven't, but I'd love to.
There's a crazy photo of the Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Washington DC.
Yeah. Yeah, they set it up there. Yeah.
One object.
I think no, so they're all kind of sewn into those squares on the left there, and I actually don't know how big that is, but I imagine that it's maybe like 6 feet by 6 feet. I don't know. I could just be pulling that out of, I don't know, but yeah, so I think they're just sewn into those larger squares, and then all of those squares can be attached together as needed, just for transportation sake, I think. Yeah. So that's a very special one. Yeah, and then we have traditional patterns or blocks, and these patterns historically have meaning. They're representative or symbolic of some sort of message or intent. And there's this rumor, actually, the story that quilt blocks were used as guiding symbols in communication throughout the Underground Railroad. And they all have like a coded meaning, basically like guiding people to freedom. And here's a couple examples. So this log cabin on the left symbolizes home, warmth, love, and security. The red center represents like the hearth and like the warmth of the cabin. That middle one is the drunkard's path, was used during Prohibition to kind of promote awareness and an idea that they had during the temperance movement. And then on the right there is the flying geese block representing direction and migration. And a little bit of a story about that one. About a year ago, I had a friend who went through like a pretty hard breakup and moved to a new place, and they didn't know anybody. And so I made her this quilt that was the flying geese block, and I just felt like that was a good use of it to kind of provide her with like some warmth and comfort while she goes on this like new journey. So that's kind of the use traditionally of a lot of these symbols. And there's like hundreds and hundreds of them. And this block right here, and this is called the monkey wrench block. And this was my final senior project in college. And yeah, so if anybody has heard of the term monkey wrenching from Edward Abbey's Monkey Wrench Gang novel, it's monkey wrenching is basically this term that refers to disobedience and sabotage carried out by environmental activists. Sometimes it's like called environmental terrorism, or it's like radical environmentalism. And there's a lot of really controversial tactics like tree spiking, where they like basically hammer huge nails into trees, and then when the tree goes to get cut down, it like wrecks the machinery, and like sometimes people are harmed in the process. And I thought it was kind of interesting to take this quilting block symbol and bring that into such like a heated debate, and there's just so much like violence and controversy there, and a quilt is inherently very soft and comforting and approachable. And yeah, I think quilts have this awesome ability to bring people together and kind of bridge conversations across like economic, social, racial, generational divides. I think it's a really powerful tool. And I kind of just thought it'd be interesting to bring this conversation into a quilt and see what people had to say about it. This symbol of resistance. Okay, and that's the poster for my senior show at UC Santa Cruz. And I also paint, so that's a painting on the right that I did. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Yeah, and then so I graduated college and then I moved home to Long Beach for a year. And this is me at Fabric to Fashion Sewing School. And this was a job I got in Long Beach, and it's the best job I've ever had. I was teaching sewing, and it was the sweetest thing I've ever done. I just fell in love with it. And if I could teach sewing for the rest of my life, I'd be so happy. And yeah, I think also I just I'm primarily a quilter, but I think I learned so much about sewing and sewing clothes and kind of going down and really getting into the basics of sewing. I learned a lot myself, and that was pretty special. But yeah, those kids on the left, I helped them sew those aprons, and they're so cute. I know they're so proud. These kids like love sewing so much. And I was about their age when I learned how to sew, and that has felt really special. Okay, and then yeah, so this past year, this is a quilt I made. This is the complexities and complications of this life embrace me. And this was me experimenting and trying to find unity and truth through geometric shapes and color that appeal to the eye and soul. And I was thinking a lot about sacred geometry at this time, and quilting is so geometric often that I was trying to think about kind of these sacred shapes and symbols and bring them into quilting. That one. This is a little zoomed in version. And this concentric stitching pattern this is like what I love about quilting is this like when you get your stitches really, and this is all hand stitched. So I do mostly hand stitching. And I find it extremely meditative, and I love this like pattern and effect and shape that the fabric starts to like form into. So that's why this quilt's also called brain, because I think it kind of made itself into a brain. Yeah, this is another one. And this one is English paper pieced and appliqued. So there was a lot of hand stitching that went into this one. And this sort of, I think, so yeah, so I'm calling this one Rail Tree, Fences, Distorted Landscape, Claustrophobia. I was kind of living in Southern California after living in Santa Cruz for almost 5 years. I was really feeling like an environmental disconnect, and I was kind of like, there's fences everywhere. Like I can't escape the fences. I like see some space over there, but I can't get over there because there's a fence. And I was feeling that a lot. So this was kind of a response to that feeling. Okay, and then back to art history. This is a couple of examples of narrative quilts or story quilts. Um, and yeah, I guess just thinking about right now, I'm thinking more about storytelling in quilts and more so narrative storytelling, and like trying to convey myths and folklore and basically these like really ancient ways of communication, kind of using quilts as a vessel for those stories. And yeah, these are a couple of examples. Um, really, really beautiful ones. And then we have Faith Ringgold, who is a very famous contemporary narrative quilter, and she coined story quilts, and she describes them as paintings made in the medium of quilting. And this quilt on the right here it's like a painting, but it's also sewn and stitched, and then the entire border of it has this story about what's going on in this scene here. Yeah. Okay, and then we have Gee's Bend, which is also very famous. And basically, it's this rural, isolated community in Gee's Bend, Alabama. And they have this really interesting abstract way of quilting that originally was formed out of the necessity for piecing pieces together because they needed blankets, they needed to be warm. And then this unique style of quilting was passed down from generation to generation. And they were so isolated and rural that like no one knew about this thing that they were doing until like the 19th century. And then they were discovered and it kind of blew up. And then in 1966, there was this thing called the Freedom Quilting Bee, which was a way for these African American women from Gee's Bend to gain economic independence by making and selling these quilts. And their designs are very, very highly acclaimed. Yeah, this is just a little one that I did kind of recently. This was actually a photo that my friend sent me of these two rats that were in her house and she had caught them and they were together and I just thought it was really beautiful. So yeah, I just thought it was really beautiful and so I stitched it. Yeah, and then we have generational stories, and that picture on the left is my great great grandpa, and then the photo on the right is a thimble that I actually use, and it was from down the line on my dad's mom's side, and I don't exactly know who it's from, but I use that, and it feels special when I use it. Yeah, so most people I think have some connection to quilting, and kind of can relate to have maybe know a quilter, have quilters in their family. And I think quilting is a very unique way of connecting us to our ancestors. And yeah, like these are actually personal family quilts that my grandma had sent me. They're from that man, Emery, on the previous slide, who was my great great grandpa. These were made, they think, by his mother, and they're pretty worn. They're not like they're like in an attic somewhere. But yeah, I think seeing these quilts made me actually think about my great great grandpa's mom, and I've never actually thought about her. And it kind of maybe told me a little bit about her and her life and where she came from, and made me think about what they were doing around this time and why they made these quilts and where these fabrics came from. And I'd actually really love to recreate these quilts and kind of try to match them to how they were at one point. And yeah. Okay, yeah. So right now, it's kind of blocking it, but yeah. So when thinking about existing as a young person today, preparing and bracing for an unknown future, I like to examine what wisdom I can learn from the past and the women from the past, and what stories I can potentially pass to those who come after me. I'll repeat that I believe that quilting is my vessel for that. I think it's just a really beautiful, fitting space for me to do that in. And yeah, let's see. Okay, yeah, and thinking about, let's see, it's kind of blocking us, but thinking about folklore and myth and story. This is a selkie that I've recently been thinking a lot about since I've arrived here. And I just seeing the harbor seals on the rocks out in the water, I was like, wow, they're selkies. So I'm thinking about that image, and I'm also thinking about Audre Lorde's "Poetry is Not a Luxury" and the transformation of silence into language in action. And this quote, "What are the words you do not have yet? What do you need to say?" And I'm sort of feel like I am having a revolution of speech personally. I have always been like a very quiet person, and I've always kind of held those silences within myself. And Yeah, that's why I'm here today, because I have stage fright and public speaking fears, but I was like, I've got to speak, I've got to do it. So I'll leave it off with, here we go. Okay, so here's just a couple of quotes that I'll read. For each of us women, there is a dark place within, where hidden and growing our true spirit rises, beautiful and tough as a chestnut stanchion against your nightmare of weakness. Your silence will not protect you, but for every real word spoken, for every attempt I had ever made to speak those truths for which I am still seeking, I had made contact with other women while we examined the words to fit a world in which we all believed, bridging our differences. For we have been socialized to respect fear more than our own needs for language and definition. And while we wait in silence for that final luxury of fearlessness, the weight of that silence will choke us. So that's, I think, oops. Yeah.
Yeah, but also. Yeah.
Oh, so you can see my face.
Yeah, this is me.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
It's funny doing this at the beginning of a residency. So
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah, so I don't know what I'm gonna be, but it's exciting. So much is gonna happen. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, do you have, are you ruminating on any particular projects right now, or what do you feel like might be in store for you? If you...
Yeah, it's a good question. So I mentioned the selfie. That's an idea. I've been doing a lot of sketches of selfies. I'm drawn to that image. And then I actually, seeing that sewing machine that you guys recently acquired, the kind of industrial, like the heavy duty, it feels like like the string is like nylon, really thick string. So I feel like I want to take advantage of that tool and maybe potentially do some sort of quilt or textile that's really heavy duty, and maybe sew sails or waterproof gear into a quilt form. I don't quite know that the images haven't come together for me yet, but I also am kind of waiting. I think I sort of need to like take up like an amount of space and kind of sit with my material for a little bit. So I'm just waiting for that to, and then once that starts happening, then things start to, come together. Yeah.
I'm just curious, kind of as you went through the transition from your politically based major before and jumped more into art, what kind of was the transition for you?
It felt amazing. It felt really good. I think that there was I was actually still really sad because I think I was just sitting with those feelings for like years. I really had to do multiple projects to really process that. And I think I've kind of come to a little bit more of a peace with it, or I don't know, maybe I just feel like I'm in the right place doing the right things. And I think I'll always kind of have that battle. That's where I'm at, and that's our generation. But yeah, I think it just felt really, really good to participate in an action that felt like it was going towards something. Because that was the whole thing of the classes. It's we don't have solutions, people are doing research, but I didn't really want to do research. So I felt like art was my way of contributing to those things. Yeah.
I have two questions. The first is wondering if you have anything about what materials you're drawn to with what you're using for your quilting. And then my second question is do you feel like you have interest in bringing the painting in, or like where does the painting live in relationship?
Yeah, that's something I'm actually really trying to figure out always, because I do have like a drawing practice, and I have like I paint, and I like to express myself in that way, and there's like a disconnect between, like, I love quilting and I love working with my fabric stash, so that kind of answers that question. Like, I have this great big fabric stash, and a lot of those fabrics sort of continue throughout my quilts. So there's like one fabric I'll be really obsessed with, and I'll use it throughout a ton of quilts until it runs out. So I love working with that material, and I love stitching, and I love being able to like lay in bed and stitch and like kind of turn off. And then I have this other side of me that like loves painting and drawing, and that experience. So I am trying to find a way to bridge the two. And Faith Greenhold, who does that, she makes her quilts or she's a quilter in the medium of, or she's a painter in the medium of quilting. I think that's really cool. And I would like to, I'm thinking about that during my time here, and how I combine the two. Yeah, I have fabric paint, which is something I'm getting excited to experiment with. Yeah.
All right. And I want to actually say your bio again because I pushed
Oh, yeah.
forward after.
Oh, after?
Yeah, if that's okay with
Yeah,
you.
totally.
Okay. Hello, people on the computer.
Here, I pulled that up for you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna read Lily's bio one more time just for the recording. That was Lily Nash. She's spectacular, and this is her little bio, and then we're gonna move to Nelli. Lily Nash is a California-based textile artist who earned her BA in art from the University of California, Santa Cruz. Thinking about a future with fewer resources and inspired by the resilience and adaptability of past generations who made do with what they had, she immerses herself in the slow, embodied tradition of quilting. Through her craft, she tells stories that connect the women who came before her with those who will live on after her. So that was Lily, and that was wonderful. Yeah. More claps. And it really is. Right.
It's true.
And then we're going to bring Nelli up next. Although, Lily, I might need your help on, escape.
Yes.
How do
Nelly,
I
I think
get to
we shared it,
notes?
right?
I think so. Yeah. There it is.
Wait, that's
No,
not it.
that's you.
That's me. I know there's a way to look at. Oh, it would.
You don't want to open it? I can like.
No, I can do it.
Don't
It was
look.
shared with me. Also, that's also a Here we go. I
Yeah.
knew it would be there.
All right. Sweet. So I
just
think
go.
you
Do
slide
you want
go
to
in.
opener?
Yeah. So I'm gonna introduce Nelli and then she's gonna come on up. So next up we have Nelli Astvatsatrian. And Nelli Astvatsatrian is an Armenian-American artist and educator based in Los Angeles. Her interdisciplinary practice investigates how memory is embedded in objects and serves as a tool against erasure and historical revision. Working across figurative illustration, printmaking, ceramics, and found object assemblage on quilts, she materializes transgenerational narratives that bridge personal and collective histories. Nelli holds a BA in Art Practice and Rhetoric from the University of California, Berkeley, and has taught at Richmond Art Center, Tilden Preparatory School, and TUMO Studios in Armenia. And welcome, Nelli. Come on up. And I'm going to share the screen and it's going to go really good. And then we're going to hit slideshow. And yours, I don't think you had notes, right?
No.
Okay, sweet. Just going
It
to
just
rip.
works. Do I go on that one? Or
Yeah, you go on this
here?
one. This is just like, just in case you
Just
see it.
there.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Nelli. Again, thank you so much for being here. This is so exciting. And Lily is so cool. We just met a few days ago and really connected, and it's amazing like hearing about her art more in depth. Um, so yeah, let's get started. I have a lot of slides and I'll move quickly through them. I think I just want to say before I start that this is like a lot of my journey as an artist, and it feels very personal, and it's an honor to kind of share with you guys. That being said, it's a lot of images, and I'm an images girl. So you guys will see that in a second. Okay, so at the start, I just wanted to prove to you guys that I like art, as evidenced by the certificate at the bottom. So I am certified, and that is me in Armenia when I was, I think I was maybe 4 in that image, or actually a still from a video where I was drawing. I remember drawing. I remember being obsessed with drawing and drawing on the walls. I wish I had a picture of that, but I don't think anyone wanted to commemorate it. I think they were upset about that. And then the picture on the right is actually when we first moved to the States. It's in Hollywood, California, and the text, I went to like an Armenian preschool when I first got here, and the text says, I really love working with my hands. Or I really love handicraft, and that's been sort of me forever. And yeah. So and I wanted to kind of start with one of the artists that really inspired me. And I was talking about this with the cohort as well, and actually with Maria too, about kind of concepts leading to art and the other way around. And I feel like this is an artist that I feel like I returned to when I was later in high school. He's an Armenian filmmaker called Sergei Parajanov. I don't know if you guys have seen his avant-garde film from 1969 called Color of Pomegranates. There are some stills on the right over there. Uh, Really incredible, beautiful film of like medieval Armenian culture. These are like tableau sort of images in his film. And on the left is one of his assemblage pieces. So I knew of this artist before, before high school. I just hadn't really looked into his work as much. And I visited Armenia for the first time in my adult life, and I went to the Sergei Parajanov House Museum in the city, and it was an incredible experience because I felt so connected to his work and kind of really understood the way his mind worked in terms of like imagery and assemblage and just being someone who collects things and puts them together. So that was really inspiring to me. And if you haven't seen this Color of Pomegranates film, I would really highly recommend it. This is me in Berkeley, so it's kind of like the start of my art career, maybe, or pre-art career is in at UC Berkeley. This is a picture of me in my studio. I've always been a maximalist and a collector and into patterns and into just like everything, which you'll see later on in my presentation because my presentations, even the format of my presentation, I feel like really reflects that. So a little bit chaotic. I love uh, drawing. I love taking photos. I love printmaking. I love painting. I love found object assemblage, more sculptural things. And this is before I discovered ceramics. So my mind was blown when I discovered ceramics. But yeah, just wanted to show you guys a picture of my studio at the time. And this was kind of like during college. This is my honors show on the left and the senior show on the right, where I was starting to break free from what I had what I had been doing in the past, which was just traditional like 2D drawing and painting. I went to an arts high school in Los Angeles where I was basically doing illustration for a lot of my time there and really wanted to be an animator. So I was like, I'm going to school for animation. And then I was like, never mind, actually, I'm going to Berkeley and I'm going to do something different. This piece on the left here was obviously an installation where I had also a video playing on that little tiny TV that I had found, and some light, like some very, this was the very, very start of me even learning how to use a sewing machine was on the left there. And that's a painting in the middle. I know the picture is small, you can't see it, but and then the piece on the right was called Sites of Memory. And it was amalgamation of things. So screen printed fabric on those curtains. There was a photo print in the middle that I had taken of a cow, some painting, some found object, some woodworking, uh, drawing, you name it. I had so much fun with this piece. It's a big wall piece. And this was the Wendy Sussman Award show, which was the departmental award I received in my last year at Berkeley. And this is really when I started to work with textiles. As you can see on the right here, on the very right, that's a screen printed rug. So this is like I think I've always really been into materials and always been into textiles, but never really explored it as a medium. And this was me kind of like grappling with it through screen printing, which is what I was doing a lot of at the time. Screen printing, and there's photography and there too. And my first ever quilt is this one that you guys are seeing that's me in the grass. I don't know if you can tell I'm lying down underneath it. And that is all screen printed. They're screen printed patches and some little applique things, but it's truly like my second time using a sewing machine or something. And I loved it. There's also a piece in there which I would rework now, you know, knowing what I know now, but there's a piece in there with a video with a screen actually underneath, the one on the wall on the right. And it had photos of my trip to Armenia, where I was documenting a lot of different regions of Armenia. And yeah, and that's some knitting down there. Okay, so this is like going back to my illustration roots, I would say. So I've always loved drawing, and I've always loved drawing women. I feel like these have always been the subject matter of my work. And towards the end of college, I actually can't remember what year it was. Someone reached out to me, a distant connection, and asked if I wanted my work in the L Word, the show, if you guys know of it. And my pieces were up in this episode, which I thought was a really fun thing. That was a really cool thing that happened to me in college. So, and then this is again continuing on the figurative drawing sort of subject. I have been teaching figure drawing for a very long time and have been doing figure drawing since I was around 13. It is one of my passions and one of my favorite things to teach. I think it's very meditative. I think it's really a great way to come into your body and sort of explore the human figure in a low pressure way. And here are some of the classes that I've taught at Richmond Art Center and Kala Art Institute in the Bay, where I lived for a couple of years after graduating college. Lots of teen and adult classes, very, very fun. And here's some posters. I worked at the Berkeley Art Museum Pacific Film Archive for a while as an art lab facilitator, and I was programming art education events for all ages, and also creating some take-home posters, which was really awesome. Okay, and this brings us to some of my first pieces after college, which were the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive community quilt on the left here, and also the Glendale Arts and Culture Commission Armenian Diaspora community quilt on the right. These were made about a year apart. They both were community quilts, of course, where I collected pieces from specifically on the left, the members of the museum, and on the right, the members of the Armenian diaspora, which was really special for me in both cases. And I think the one on the left has around 50 patches or participants. The one on the right has a little bit less. But these are, so the one on the left, there are participants from all over the country, and the one on the right has participants from all over the world. And it was a really amazing experience. Most of them were mailed to me. So I actually collected these virtually and then had them in the mail, and then I pieced them together in these quilts. The one on the right was actually hanging in the city of Glendale, like the historic gas station exhibition space in Glendale. And here's just some cool images of when I received these pieces in the mail. So both of the pieces I didn't say were themed around home. So folks were really thinking about investigating what home means to them. And some even wrote me very sweet letters and sort of notes on what they were thinking about while they were quilting. And I loved reading them. Yeah, really awesome. And then this was my first ever residency at AZ West Andrea's Hotel in Joshua Tree, California. It was a very interesting time. I stayed in that shipping container right there on the top right, and I was actually working on the Armenian diaspora community quilt there. So limited space, but it was fun. I made it work, and it was a really crazy. I don't know if you guys have ever been out to Joshua Tree, but the scenery is incredible. The sunsets are so beautiful, and I felt really inspired here. I taught this month-long quilt making workshop at TUMO Studios, which was one of the most amazing experiences, where we really were able to dive into so many surface design techniques. So as you can see here, we were doing cyanotype, we were doing actually printmaking, block printing. Some students painted directly on fabric. We did bleach dye. What else did we do? We did natural dye. So it was truly a dream come true with the most amazing group of college-age students in Armenia at a really awesome craft studio. And again, the students were exploring themes of what home meant to them. As you can see, the student at the top was doing these mountains, a mountain range in Armenia that's very iconic, and some were doing their family members. They were printing them with cyanotype, and others were doing sort of the floral or plant landscape. And these are some of the finished products. So the kids were so talented. And I especially loved this really simple one on the right with the these are swallow birds, which are all over Armenia. I mean, they like there's hundreds of them in the sky at sunset, and they're gorgeous. And I feel like the student really captured their movement in such an awesome way. I don't know if you can actually see much of it, but it was a lot of some of them first time sewing ever, actually most of them. And they were able to make a finished quilt, which was really impressive and so awesome to witness. And this is another student who made a dinner table, and there were so many different components to this. There's cyanotype, there was screen printing, and some found object materials, as you guys can see. Really fun. And I mean, my students inspire me all the time. So I love doing what I do. And this is, I just wanted to throw in another artist inspiration, Betty Saar, who works with found object, assemblage, the one on the left, a newer piece in 2002. I really loved the photo. You guys probably can't see it that well, but there's a photo in here, and kind of traces of a figure as well as the gloves. I mentioned it in the beginning and I didn't elaborate, but I think for me, a lot of my favorite artists are actually people that I've kind of like looked at and been like, wait, we are doing or we're doing a similar thing or thinking in a similar way. It's kind of like after I make the piece, I go backward and I think about the concept a lot of the time, or like, why are gloves showing up for me like over and over and over again, rather than thinking about the gloves before I make the thing. And so this is one of the artists where I've like kind of looked back and been like, whoa, this really resonates with kind of my thought process or how I like to put things together. And I love how figurative these pieces are without being obviously figurative. And this is something that in the past few years I've been exploring more, is how to represent the figure without just outright drawing it, which is what I've been used to for so long, since high school. And a lot of it has to do with placing belongings of a person or like an imagined person in the piece of art, which I think is super, super cool. And I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. This is Donna Han, maybe a lesser known artist, in 1995, Extrasential Purge. She's a Korean-American artist who uses traditional women's craft materials to explore dislocation, separation from self and home, and conflict between collective social expectations and individual dreams and desires. She works with found materials because they are cheap and because they help her bridge disparate worlds and build new concepts of home by finding threads that connect the inner, outer, and underworlds. Found materials like past experiences remembered, explains Han, are recycled debris given new life. I also just love the kind of everything factor of this, like throw everything on the wall, bring everything with you, and be a maximalist if that really is who you are. And I really appreciate that. She has some dolls in this and clothing items and all kinds of things. Because I don't know, gallery walls are boring, and it's fun to make spaces look full and like home, in my opinion. This is actually where I was supposed to be a teaching assistant for this awesome textiles class at Haystack Mountain School of Craft, but I got COVID the first day that I got there. I wanted to just put this in there. I mean, I got COVID the second day I got there, so I did do some natural dye here. But I wanted to put this in here just in case. And I mean, I don't know if anyone has heard of this place. I thought that folks here who are committed to craft might be interested in it. Incredible, incredible school in Maine, on an island in Maine. So I would really encourage anyone to check it out. They have classes open to the public and all kinds of awesome mediums. And this was a residency I did at the Oxbow School of Art and Artists residency in Saugatuck, Michigan, which is cool because Katie is from Grand Rapids, close by. And I had so much fun at this residency. I was really playing with a lot of materials, doing some screen printing, and really getting a little bit deeper into my assemblage quilt making practice. The problem of assemblage, I think, is that you can keep rearranging forever, which is what happens with me sometimes, and I need to commit. But it's so fun to rearrange and hang things on the wall and collect. I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this. So this was like mainly what I was doing there. And these are some of and then I started like I was like, what if I airbrushed? And then I started airbrushing these giant figures on fabric and placing like yarn, hair on them. And going back to what I was talking about with Betty Saar, kind of like and obviously these are more sort of apparent representations of the figure, but thinking about like what I even want to portray with these figures and who they are, um and sort of like coming to the conclusion that these feel like ancestors to me a lot of the time, like people from the past that I'm trying to give stories to that might have not had stories or not been able to pass down their stories because of um, sort of the history of Armenia and displacement and genocide and etc. And a lot of the women I portray, I imagine having belongings because I myself am a girl with a lot of belongings and like bags and shoes and earrings and things like that. And I think it's so important for me to kind of preserve their history and in that way. And I'll show you guys. So the quilt on the left is one that it's actually, it is a quilt. So it has batting and, everything. And it was hand quilted. And it's one of those airbrush pieces that you saw in the last image. It's a face and it's actually a self-portrait. So the plaque, the ceramic plaque on the bottom says my name. And this was the first time that I had started doing ceramics. And I was like, this is so cool. How can I put this in my quilt? Super impractical. Like it's like a rock and I'm putting it on textile. But I was like, I need to make this happen in some other ways. I don't know if you guys can see, but there's also a key, like an antique keyhole hardware thing on there as well. And it's supposed to be sort of like a window, and it's like this veil that you're gazing through to see um, this woman. And on the right, this was actually a bit earlier piece, but again, sort of experimenting with so many different materials. Photo transfer. I love photo transfer. It's so fun. Gloves, found object gloves. Again, like looking back, I'm like, whoa, me and Betty Saar were onto something. And then this doll at the bottom that I made with with braids, which are like traditional sort of Armenian hairstyle, long black braids, and printmaking on the sides and some natural dye patches and cyanotype and earrings. I love accessories. So they're like these ancient Armenian earrings that I photo transferred onto the fabric. This one's called Body as Archive. So again, getting this one is sort of getting closer to what I was saying before about the body being represented and implied rather than just like straight up drawn onto paper or fabric. This is a cool reference to an early quilt, actually called Lady Shoe Quilt, by an anonymous quilter. Doesn't a lot of these quilts are anonymous. A lot of historical quilts are unfortunately anonymous, but I actually was like, this is the first thing I ever made in ceramic were these shoes. And I was thinking about like the form, um, like first thinking about the drawing that I did of the shoe going on to like being screen printed. And then I was thinking about the screen print going onto fabric. And then I was thinking about, okay, what about ceramic? Like, how can I make it even more sculptural and like push it even more into the 3D world? So that's the story of like how the shoes came about, and I still haven't figured out how to display this, but I would love for the two to work together in some way. So this is in part kind of an in progress piece. But all of my work is in progress because it's all like rearranging. Okay, and so again, these are some of my drawings on the left. I'm not sure if you can really see it. But again, thinking about like how I can like pull the 2D into the 3D, uh, the the plaque on the right is a ceramic slab piece with underglaze pencil, which was one of my first kind of experiments with the underglaze pencil. And it ended up being really, I mean, I really liked the process. And here's some more of my drawings on ceramic slabs. Just silly little drawings, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's just about girls and their cute outfits. But it's meaningful to me too, because again, like I was saying, a lot of the women in my past, my ancestors, have sort of lost their stories because of being killed or having to leave their homeland and travel and live somewhere completely different without their belongings. And I think ceramic is such an awesome medium to preserve and um, solidify history and story. It's so material, it's so lasting, it's so real, I think. So they're kind of documents too. The way that quilts can be too. Okay. Plates. And then I was like, what if I made plates? Because I was having so much trouble with ceramic, like 3D, and I was like, I'm the slab is so much more approachable, but what else could I do? And then I started making these plates with images on them, which were super fun because they kind of related back to the thematic element of my work, which is about home and women in the home. So these are some figurative drawings on plates. And then I kind of went crazy. There's so many more of these, but I just put these here. I love text. And some of this text, like to me, is a little funny, but other people I might not like translate as well. But to me, it's silly. Like, I'm sorry I didn't know that. You know what I mean? But it's also dead serious. Like, discipline to me is really, you know what I mean? I'm like, discipline is so important. And amen. So it's playful slash serious slash somewhat even like grappling with like spirituality and religion. I feel like I'm jumping everywhere with this artist talk, but you guys can really get a sense of like me. I feel like I feel like I'm constantly trying. And this is like a testament to that. Like I really try really hard. And I feel like this is me trying to be more spiritual and more like in touch with whatever kind of like religion. Because I'm not very, very in touch with religion. So child of God, you know, don't die wondering. And it reminded me, again, this is like a retrospect sort of situation where I look back and I saw this plate and I was like, wow, people were doing this in 1661, you know? And I feel like they were being funny too. Like I have this feeling that they were being a little funny. Welcome, my friends, you know? And I think, and in my mind, I was like, I wrote this note on the side where I was like, is this the live, laugh, love of 1661? Like the kind of Hobby Lobby like I don't know. And I love the cursive. There's something about the cursive. And this is some other text. So I maybe this was apparent. I didn't say this before, but I'm very much an internet girl. And I feel like I've always been on the internet, and I feel like I've always been a little silly meme, like chronically online, unfortunately. And these are like, I don't know if you can see this. I mean, it's maybe not important that you see it, but it says God's girl always protected. And it says, one of them says, don't show me anything in the phone anymore. There's nothing I need to know that's in the phone. Show me a bird's eye, a child's smile. And it says you can't put your arm around a memory. So these mean a lot to me. And I am always like, I need to do something with the text. You are the altar. Everyone should live in their own cathedral. It makes me so happy to share this with you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Um, it says childlike faith. Oh, that one says I want everything. Oh, that one is very me. That one is very me. Okay, wait.
Everything.
Yeah, so someone took it seriously, and I was in a show called Let Them Eat Off the Plate at Superhouse Gallery in New York. It was a dinner that included 50 plates by different artists around the country, and it was a really cool opportunity to show my work in a gallery setting, but it was kind of like this more informal gallery setting, which I think is exactly how I want my work to be displayed at a dinner. And my eventual plan with these plates would be to have a dinner event with like local cooks and yeah, I think that would be really awesome and interactive and cool. This is I was part of a group show at a gallery called Room 3557 in Los Angeles, and this piece collectively was called Inheritance. And I thought it was really cool opportunity because I got to have my pieces in a display case, which again, breaks free from the wall and gives me this like cozy little like almost like box, like diorama space to include all my treasured belongings and things that I made and objects, and kind of centered around this character that I was imagining. That I mean, this real character who I've never met, my great grandmother Mushkinaz, who escaped the genocide, and my grandfather has passed, and I don't know much about her, but I was trying to honor her with these sort of belongings. This is where the ceramic shoes ended up living. And this drawing, which I'll show you guys in a second, a closer image of that, and some rocks from Armenia and sap from a tree, cyanotype picture of an Armenian woman in the early 20th century, a poem which I inscribed on ceramic slab. That's the black thing at the top. I'll show you guys that as well. And this doll, which I had so much fun making, on the right with some natural dye clothing and hair. This is a closer up picture of the poem on the left, which talks about freedom and sort of longing for land, and the picture on the right, which is like an 18 by 24 pencil drawing of a woman. And then just to show you guys kind of like my research, it's really visual. I hoard images. And here are some of them of Armenian women. And also a physical representation of that on ceramic. So I drew that on there with oxide. That's the one in the middle right there. Okay, and here's a little bit more about what I was talking about with the ceramic as an object that is, to me, quite permanent and can hold a lot of history in a very real material way. This is a map of the world on the left, late Babylonian, 6th century BCE clay map found in Iraq. And I know that they knew that this was going to last and that people were going to see it. And I think it's such an awesome way of preserving history, in the same way that I think quilts are, which Lily talked about, which was awesome. And then on the right here, it's really sad. It's really beautiful, but really sad. In 2020, an autonomous region in between Armenia and Azerbaijan, where it was populated mostly by Armenians, was basically attacked by Azerbaijan and Turkey in an effort to sort of erase Armenians from that land. This was just a couple years ago, and they succeeded in displacing the entire Armenian population from that area and have gone back in and now inhabited the homes of Armenians, have torn down really historic sites, ancient churches, and are revising history, which has happened throughout all of history to many different cultures and many different people. But this was really, really recent. So it was tough to witness in real time and tough to see how little could be done. And this is actually just right before everyone was expelled from that land. A woman is using a piece of paper and it looks like vine charcoal to get some of these inscriptions onto paper. Can you guys tell kind of what's happening there? Yeah. So again, another testament to like how stone and clay can be so permanent and carry so much history. And it can, I mean, in a culture where a lot of our history has been erased, I think it's especially important to preserve that. And here are some cool ancient sort of celestial maps, celestial diagrams. The one in the middle is a map of the solar system, all Armenian kind of, and the one in the middle is bronze. I think these are really awesome. I wanted to throw them in there because I want to use them for a future project. And this was like so funny. I saw this on Instagram. And I was like, this is so my notes app. And it's like all these like charts, like the notes app on your iPhone. This is very, very me as well. And here's I've been obsessed with crosses, like Orthodox crosses, really. Again, this is like the spirituality thing where I'm like trying really hard. And then this is some like the one in the middle bottom is like an illuminated manuscript, an Armenian illuminated manuscript. I don't know how well you can see it, but I've been trying to make some ceramic illuminated manuscript covers, and these are kind of like my test tries and experiments. And then this on the right was sort of how it came to life with the manuscript, and those are they're natural dye fabric. It's a little soft book with natural dye fabric and photo transfer, and the cover is, of course, ceramic. And the one on the left is actually a song, or sorry, a poem by a famous Armenian poet. And it's on this ancient vessel that I found that I tried to copy. Here's some more of my writing in stone. The one on the left is my great-grandmother. It's a portrait. The one on the right is a image of Mother Armenia, it's a statue in Armenia. And then here's again the cross. And this was from a monotype printmaking workshop that I taught at the Brand Library and Art Center in Glendale. It's a monotype print with some flower detail. And here's some future ongoing projects that I'm working on. On the left here is a soft backgammon board that I'm working on with ceramic tile pieces. And backgammon is traditionally played by men. I used to go to the park with my grandpa all the time, and there are so many men at the park playing backgammon. It's basically like a community building sort of activity. And I wanted to make this kind of like lacier, like floral even backgammon board to kind of have a spin on that. And the one on the right is actually three wood panel altar that I'm working on. It's pretty large and wood, and I'm painting on it. I don't have any photos right now, but yeah, just wanted to show you guys sort of what's going on. And this is the most recent thing that I've been thinking about. Actually, like last week, I was like, I need to do this. This is a wedding, like I said, the autonomous region in Armenia that was sort of ethnically cleansed of Armenians recently. It's called Artsakh. And in 2008, I recently discovered that they held a 700-person wedding in the city. And in an effort to, and I mean, it's so sad, but it's in an effort to kind of grow the population, right? They were like, we need more people because there's not a lot of people and the history of the place is so tumultuous. And there just needs to be more people here. But I also thought it's like kind of funny and so strange. And I would love to make a quilt like representing not each of these couples, but maybe like 70 of 70 patches with these couples. I haven't thought exactly yet of what I want to do, but thought that was really cool. And at Alchemy, I'd love to work on some dolls. This is a doll I made on the right, and then here's some Paul Klee puppets that I'm really inspired by, and this other artist, Nina Ricci, on the left. And yeah, and I just wanted to bring it back to teaching. I don't know how much I talked about that, but I love teaching. And here's some of my students of all ages who inspire me every single day. And that's pretty much it. That's me as a baby, and that's who I want to be as an older person. This woman with the her tiny things in the tree. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for listening. Okay.
I have a question, which is, I would love to hear more about like the Lady shoe.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so fun, and the ceramic and then the quilt that was next to it, but I feel like that like shape was also in a lot of your drawings.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's so true. I don't know. I've been drawing for a really long time. I think it's like it feels like very feminine to me. A lot of my work is about women and representing women. But it's also like I don't know, it's supposed to be something sexy, like a heel. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, I think, and that's kind of the underlying theme sometimes of my work is like, oh, this is actually kind of silly. And like kind of like it doesn't have to be centralized, you know? But I also just love heels as a shape. I love what's called a lines girl. Like I really love line work and things that can be stylized. The waves, shoes are.
That's not a question, but I just really like the way that your humor carries through your art and
I'm
through your
so glad.
presentation.
Thank God. It's it's hard to be funny because people want you to be serious with art sometimes. But it's hard for me. Yeah, it's hard for me to be serious. But I'm very serious. You can tell I'm very serious about it. It's like life is
Like you're committed.
I'm committed.
Humor is a theme in there.
Yeah.
That
Okay, thank God.
that 1600 plate is totally the lip lap.
Wait, the one.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What appeals to you about making puppets or dolls?
Yeah.
And how
I think it's another iteration of the figure, and I feel like I'm in an expansion era where I'm like, I need to like expand in every direction. Someone asked me recently if I wanted to go to grad school, and I was thinking about how I want to go to school. I don't know if I want to go somewhere and just be critiqued on my art right now because I feel like I want to learn so many more skills and so many more crafts, and I feel like that's where I'm at right now. So the dolls is part of that where I'm like, whoa, I haven't really done a lot of dolls. Like maybe that would be oh, thanks. Yeah, thank you. But I wish I have been thinking about doing it for so long. And I think thematically it works well with like the other textile work that I've been doing, and eventually quilts. But everything's like gonna be in one thing at some point, but I haven't figured it out yet.
I feel inspired by how expansive the ideas are.
Yay. Was it confusing though?
No.
Was it too all over the place? Okay.
That's, I don't have a question, I have a comment as well, but I feel like it's cool to see how many threads you're pulling together, but there's also a lot of consistency throughout it, which is, you know, when you're working with, you know, language and monotypes and specific symbols from religion and, you know, all of these different things, but there are these common threads, and it's really cool to see that. It's interesting, and I'm curious how it all continues going together and where they crisscross and culminate. It's exciting.
Thank you. That feedback is so valuable. Thank you.
I've never heard anyone say I'm a maximalist.
I
get all these points for minimal. Getting rid of everything. You're like, bring it on.
To touch on genocide, it's a hard thing to do. You do go through and people don't even know about it in town.
Yeah.
Millions of people were actually killed.
Yeah, and I think my art isn't about genocide, of course. Like I feel like, you know, I feel like it's not about being a victim in those the ways that things have gone down, which it's been bad. Like for Armenians, it's been really bad in the past. But for me, it's more of like I'm here and I'm playing, and here's like maybe a whole new way of like being Armenian that isn't rooted in violence and sadness. Yeah.
It's like really, it's like part of it is like really celebrating what it means to be Armenian.
Yeah.
And celebrating ancestor or something, you know, throwing humor in and throwing all this like delight and really.
Yay, so glad that means.
Yeah.
I had never seen that alphabet before.
Oh, the Armenian alphabet. Yeah, I was talking to something about how close it is to the Ethiopian.
Oh,
It looks so similar to the Ethiopian.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a Indo-European language.
Are you able to read that?
Yeah, slowly. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, you're both so multi-talented, and yoga practice was amazing this morning. And I thought you pulled so much into it and made it serious, but light at the same time. And then I wanted to ask a question. Do you know the name Clarissa and call her Estes? You're both telling story through your presentation. She's an amazing writer. She's a Jungian analyst, and she's a holder. I forget the term for it, but women are the holder of the story. So you both are telling a beautiful story, because she would be her Women Who Run with the Wolves. That's the name of her book.
Oh, we've heard that book.
Awesome. That's suggested.
Fun together.
Yeah, very right.
All right.
Such an awesome.
That is it. Thank you for listening, and hope you join us next time.